Right, thanks very much indeed, Shane and Bob. That after Lubos's presentation last month about orbital mechanics, I thought we'd a little bit more down to earth today. And this travelogue with a bit of astronomy as well is to just to bring together two of my favourite things: stargazing, astronomy, and also holidays as well. So this is a sort of a bit of a travelogue to sort of looking back at the holiday that we had, Dave, Bob and I, in the Palma in 2019. And was just sort of wanted to go through a little about what we did and what we achieved at sort of when we were out there. So introduction, what I'm looking at is sort of why La Palma. The place where we went this particular time was the Athos Star Camp, which is in La Palma. Looking at then be talking about my setup and sort of how I did that. Part of it is on the marathon, because I wasn't quite sure when you go out there exactly what to do. So I did myself a Messier marathon, and so I just give some examples from that and the results from that as well. So that's really what I wanted to do this evening. But as I said, if you want to raise a question or whatever, then fire up something with Shane and. Hang on. Just start my video. Okay, sorry about that. Dropped out. So what I was going to do is to go through then the results at the end. So why La Palma? La Palma is very significant as far as astronomy is concerned, and basically off the coast of Africa, one of the Canary Islands, and it was one of the places back in sort of the 60s that British astronomy looked at when they were looking at relocating the Isaac Newton telescope from Herstmonceux down in Sussex. Now, Sussex is not the place with the most clear skies, and as such, once they sort of built this huge telescope, they realised that they couldn't use it very much. So what they decided to do was to look for other areas where they could put it, and one of the places they looked at top of mountains and such like, and the place they came to conclusion was La Palma. Now the authorities in La Palma were sort of particularly accommodating. They actually built a road right up to the top of the mountain for the astronomers, and it's got a really good vista sort of both for looking sort of at the stars and also for sort of holidays, which is why sort of I quite like going there as well. So from an astronomical point of view, this is a sky and telescope sort of survey that was done of the Tenerife and the Canaries. So you've got right in the middle, you've got Tenerife, you've got Tenerife and Gran Canaria, Lanzarote down here. La Palma is just over to the left here, and as you can see, the density of light that is given off by sort of the towns in Santa Cruz in Tenerife. You've got Los Cristianos down the bottom as well. So the amount that you can actually get, or the amount of light that you can actually get from the stars is significantly greater. The amount from light pollution is significantly less. So that's the reason why it was actually situated on the Canaries. So this is a picture of the telescopes at the top of the La Palma. It's called the Rock de Mucacos, and I've done another talk on all the telescopes up at the top there. So the mountain top is around 8,000 feet to just over 2,400 meters, and this picture is not a lake in actual fact. This is the new glass roof to the visitor centre at the top of La Palma. It's been about 2 years in the making, and still not finished when we were there back in June, July last year. This is another one. This is one of the magic telescopes that this is looking for gamma rays and Cherenkov radiation. They are actually increasing. They were sort of one there originally when we went back in 2015. They've built another one, and I think about another 3 are planned. So it's one of the growth areas that they're sort of taking off under the IAC, which is the Canaries sort of Astronomical Association. This is right up at the top of the observatories along the ridge or along the edge of the crater. So the Palma is an extinct volcano, and all these are situated right on the edge of the caldera. So you've got a very steep hill on one side and also down into caldera as well. And if you look behind you, behind the observatories, that's all the clouds, because the cloud tends to come in at around 2,000 meters and not to go above that. So what it means is that you get a sort of a sea of what looks like a sea of cloud, and that can also help the observatories by blocking out any potential light pollution from below as well. And this is one of the largest optical telescopes in the world. It's one of the 8-meter Grand Tucan telescope. There are 2 British ones. There's Isaac Newton, which was moved out from Herschel, so as I said, got the William Herschel telescope, and then this is the Spanish one, which is now the largest one, I believe, in the Northern Hemisphere. This is one of our trips up to the top of the mountains of trying to catch the sunset before it went down, and the Palma is excellent for that as well. What I would also say, though, is that it's a working observatory, and that this is a picture that I took last time. It's got the laser, which was being tested by the William Herschel telescope, and we traced it all the way back up to a point in Leo that you could actually spot it, but you couldn't see it by just with the naked eye. But as soon as you took a picture, you got this line going all the way through the images, which was a bit of a shame, but also something quite interesting as well. Okay, so the Palma in general has got 2 aspects. It's got the astronomy, and this is a map of the island, which gives you the sort of astronomical observing sites, but also the trekking. So one of their big things is astronomy holidays, but also for cycling and trekking. There's some wonderful sort of walks that you can do up into the caldera. You can camp overnight in the caldera, but then it is a long climb up the 8,000 feet onto the top of the rim of the crater. Around the island, that there are these various observing sites, and they have an astronomical theme in many cases. This one's pointing up to Polaris, and there's a board that shows sort of little bits on astronomical sort of sites that you could see, and basically for people who they run various tours, and so therefore they're quite often that if you do go there in the early evening, then there will be a busload of people being shown a sort of a brief glimpse of the night sky before they move off to their restaurant meal and a glass of champagne. This was one of the places that I actually wanted to go back to, because Paul Cabrelli and Dave Schaefer-Wall and myself were due to be out there in April this year, and one of the things that I wanted to do was Dave and I had found this place down near the coast last time, and what I wanted to do was to go back and see whether we could to take that as the foreground with the Milky Way behind it. So that's obviously with the current situation, we've had to delay our trip to November, so that'll have to be put on hold for that as well. Okay, so getting to La Palma, obviously it's an island. We're an island. You have to go by air, and as astronomers, we don't really travel very light. That's sort of the normal thing of having a 20-kilogram suitcase or so 25 kilogram doesn't particularly work well. So this one has clearly. I was entered this for a. There was a competition done by EasyJet for taking a picture of out of the window for EasyJet, and I sort of took that with the quite clearly the EasyJet plane when we went out to see if I could put that in the competition, but sadly didn't get anywhere. So we went out on EasyJet, tend to fly during the winter from November through to March, and nobody else flies into there apart from TUI during the rest of the year. So it's really a no choice. The only trouble is that TUI will only allow you to take one case normally, and the only way of getting around that is by taking some sports equipment. So we've investigated that. In actual fact, we took last time, we managed to get some 30 kilograms of sports equipment, i.e. astronomical equipment, taken in as well. So that's how you get there. Previously, we'd not gone to we'd hired a villa, which worked particularly well, but we found this star camp. So I thought, and this is where we went back to last year. So I thought it'd be quite a useful thing for people to see what sort of facility that is available at a star camp in sort of that people may want to take advantage of in due course. So at our star campus, as the name of the campus implies, it's owned by a German, Kai. It used to be Botanical Gardens, and he took over about 4 years ago and has spent an awful lot of money in developing it into a star camp and observing centre. It's really a way of an example. It's just you've got here, this is showing the A's are the accommodation. So you've got one of accommodation there with an observing site on the top there. You've got more accommodation, so you've got more observing sites down here, which is where Bob and I tended to observe from. That's more accommodation. D is the orangery, and C is where Bob and I had our accommodation. For people who don't like maps in particular, this is a picture taken from the side. This is what was known as the orangery, which is basically the communal hub of the star camp. This was where Bob and there's two sets of accommodation on that site there. You've then got another set of accommodation down there, and down onto the left-hand side there are the observing sites that Bob and I used. They're very, very nicely set up. You've got a place, you've got obviously somewhere to sit. You've got a barrier around there to hopefully stop you. Bearing in mind there's about a 15-foot drop just the other side of that, and it's pitch black. I'm not quite sure whether it would be a help or a hindrance, the barrier there. But you've also got these workstations which are quite good in that you've got power down here. You've got space for a laptop, and so that can be moved all the way around to either side to actually put it where you want to. And this is the orangery itself. This is obviously there's a library at the end where I've taken a picture from. It's sort of basically a communal area. And it's very much a camp, and that's sort of down the bottom, sort of where the red drawers are. That is the communal kitchen. So, from a perspective of if you like sort of everything to be done for you, then it's clearly not for you. And if you don't like having a shared cooker, a shared fridge, and such like, then it's also can be not as attractive. But overall, we were very fortunate because it's owned by a German and promoted heavily in Germany that we were there, and there were 3 other couples there. They were all German. To their credit, they all spoke English. They were all interested in astronomy, and it was particularly sort of pleasant and enjoyable from that point of view. Accommodation. Now, hang on 1 second, let's have a drink. Right, cozy is it is single accommodation basically. Whilst it may be advertised as being sort of a double room, in practicalities, as I said earlier, astronomers don't really travel lightly, and by the time you set out most of your equipment, there was a table there, but it was just easier to set everything out on the bed. So all the telescope, all the bits and pieces that you require every night. It's just easy to do it, and basically as a one-person accommodation with ensuite shower worked quite well. Notice the copious blackout material on the window itself. That you've got clearly you're staying up a significant proportion of the night and then trying to sleep in the day. So that it ended up I put a sort of balaclava over my head and sort of hid under the covers, and that was the best way to get some sleep because there was no curtains or only a peripheral one at the door as well. So that's perhaps something that could be looked at as well. So this is me with the setup I was using. What I wanted to show this for really was the decision that we took was that I would I'd previously taken my EQ5 mount, which had, as Ian will vouch for, that I've chopped some of the I shortened the leg, took it apart, chopped some of the legs off so I could actually get it into a suitcase. This time I decided to rent some of the equipment from Kai. So effectively I took my sort of telescope and I took my hand controller and my power adapter, because he charges everything by a piece item. So I thought if I took my hand controller, if I took my adapter, then that would be fine. But oh no, this was a different HEQ5 mount. So in the end, I'd taken bits and pieces out there which I didn't use. And as we all know, when we've got new astronomical equipment, it doesn't really work on day one, does it? That we have the situation whereby we buy something new, we take it out the first time, and your first night at least is lost in gremlins and so on. And so I had difficulty with the weights involved. I had an extra weight on the front, so it did mean that I sort of lost a night because I had to get used to the equipment. And another thing is that we did have one sort of bad night, and as such, if it's cloudy, then you still, even if you've rented the equipment, you still got to use it, or still got to use it, or anyway, you've got to pay for it. So if it's a mount for a week, then that was about 60 quid, which was roughly the same as if you took an extra 20 kilograms of luggage on the plane. So I thought that was a reasonable thing. What you do have though is that he does have this beast, which is I think a 22-inch dob, which is great. But if you that is costing I think it was around 80 euros per night. So if you choose to have a go at that, which you'd say is a great opportunity if you haven't looked through a large telescope before, or with a group of you, then that can be really good. But you do actually, once you're committed to it, unless you do it at last minute, then you might not be able to have it then. So you are committed to that. You can even, he's got a dome as well, and which has got some very good equipment in there. And there's a sort of a war room there which you can use and so on. But you're then talking around sort of 200 odd plus euros per night. And there are lots of little extras whereby sort of the true cost of it can escalate if you're not too careful. So this is not his wanting to be sort of to put people off, but just there are a few aspects that I've mentioned about hiring the equipment. And one of the things, as far as Tenerife is concerned and La Palma, is that it is just off the African coast. And if you look at this, is a map of the dust that comes from the Sahara. I know many people have gone outside in the morning in Britain, and if there's been a southerly wind, that quite often there will be a dust over your car. It looks as though somebody sort of tipped a bag of dust or something over it. This is a map of the dust that is the winds coming off the Sahara. And if you look, there's the Palma is the furthest away on the west, so that gets less than Tenerife but there are still possibility of actually sort of getting dust storms, which can last for a long period of time. And that's not so much of an issue as far as some of the professional observatories are concerned, because what they're actually doing is they're taking short exposures or looking at and taking multiple exposures or observations as far as an object is concerned. For us as amateurs, when we're doing either time lapse or indeed sort of long exposures and then stacking them, the dust moves across the field of view, and therefore when you try and stack them, your dust is unevenly spread all over the image, and there's no way that you can actually undo that. So that's one of the disadvantages. Another one is purely logistically as far as the camp is concerned. This was taken by Arno, one of the German sort of people who was doing some work, and they were down in the accommodation down near our observing site. What basically was happening here is that you've got the laser from the William Herschel one, but you've also got the light from the orangery, and because it's a dark site with on the camp, there are motion sensor red lights that pick up when people are walking along the tracks. So when we went back from the observing site up to the orangery, we inadvertently triggered the red light, and this was quite clearly picked up from Arno's position down by his observing site outside his accommodation. So it's something that yes, we only learnt it more or less right at the end when we really got talking to them. But obviously, if you've got a picture like that, which you might think, oh, it's been spoilt by the laser on the left-hand side, but it certainly is not the picture that he would have hoped for when he sort of took all those images and stacking them together. You may, of course, also end up with some people who try and take over the whole camp, of course, and you just can't get anywhere to put anything. Or you may get caught with people who just all they seem to want to do is to have their gin and tonic and have a bottle of wine, or even if it may be, as the talk proves, that it can be contrary to opinion, a bottle of wine doesn't have to be drunk all in one hit. Having said that, the site is absolutely wonderful, and there can be no sort of better place really to have your homemade pizza on the balcony outside the orangery, having set up earlier for a night's observing. So, marathon. It's a Messier marathon, and as far as people on the call are concerned, that most of you will have heard of the Messier marathon. As far as Baz is concerned, I do remember we've had a couple of Messier marathons that have taken place. That I seem to think that we've cancelled more Messier marathons than sort of certainly that we've held. And the best one that I can remember is back, I think, when the Icelandic volcano erupted, and all the planes were grounded, and there were no planes, no contrails, and so we did over sort of a Saturday night have an exceptionally good observing session. So that was my favourite one. We were due to hold one, I think, the 21st of March this year, but that was going to clash with various other bits and pieces, and in any case, that events got slightly taken over. The point about a Messier marathon is that Messier obviously died just over 200 years ago, and his fuzzy objects. The best time to see the objects in their entirety. This is mainly sort of being driven. Sort of Don Backholtz. There's an American guy, and his book, which is now I think out of print, but it was very much a case of became popular in the sort of 60s and 70s to try and do the Messier marathon, predominantly from the southern United States, which around 40 degrees makes it far easier than it is in the UK. and also you can be fairly sort of sure on clear skies, because the things that you actually need for a Messier marathon to be successful is sufficient dark skies, clear skies overnight, good horizons, and really those don't coincide too much within the UK, but they sort of, I thought, oh, if we're out in the Palma, maybe it's an opportunity. Even though we were there in May, I thought just see how many I could get. So that was the site. This by way of explanation. So it's a Williams Optics 71 was it 5.9 f5.9 with a 0.8 focal reducer, brings it down to about just under 5, 4.72 focal f ratio. It's had a focal length of 420 without the focal reducer. Now 0.8 times that would come out at 320 something, although when I was doing in Pix Insight it was coming out at 382 millimeters, so I'm not quite sure where the difference is, but so it's on a HEQ5 mount. The camera is a DSLR. It's the 6D Mark II, which is David bought one previously, and I was impressed with what it actually did for both general photography, but also for astronomical. So that's my kit for that evening. I think it's important to note actually as well is that 71 millimeter refractor. Messier, when he was doing his observations, he had a 100 millimeter refractor. Now, I would say that's probably, he would have more light gathering ability and resolution potentially. I think that probably the improved optics of the Williams optic would probably make it a fairly good comparison. And what I wanted to do was to see what perhaps Messier would have seen, and whilst people look at them now and say, oh, why on earth did he include that in his catalogue? You can't possibly mistake that for a comet, which is why he originally drew up the list. But once you actually see them through a small telescope, and bearing in mind the images I took, that you may have a little bit more sympathy and more reason as to why he might have done that. Just before, so this was the night of the 7th and 8th of May 2019. We went purposely at the new moon. This was about the last, I think we were coming back on the 9th in actual fact. So this was just the first sign of and I think it's possibly 1 day old or slightly less than 1 day old. Taken on the screen of the camera, as you can be seen, that sort of zoomed in quite significantly. So that was the first portion of the evening. Now, this is perhaps more for benefit of YouTube people looking or sort of watching this afterwards, in that clearly the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, and traverses across the sky due to the Earth rotating. So the stars do the same, and as such, we need to counter that rotation by aligning correctly. Now, if you're looking through a finder scope and you look directly at the North Pole, it's quite clearly that even the North Pole, the Polaris, it drifts to some degree. Now, the amount by which your alignment, the effect of it, and if you have incorrect, the effect it will have on your photos or your images. If you're visual, then it won't have any effect at all, and you might as well not bother. If you're taking images, the more accurate you can get it, then the better you'll find, the longer you'll be able to image for without getting trailing. So one of the particular things, this is in my own mount at home, but just really for travel scopes, this is an absolute boom, and which I think a significant number of people who've got portable rigs have gone for. This is the Polemaster. Effectively, instead of looking or groveling on your knees, and especially when you cut the tripod legs down to make them even shorter, looking through a finder scope, sort of down at that level, and then trying to get the offset to the pole star correctly. This effectively goes in, there's an adapter there, there's a camera, and basically you stand to one side and it does its magic. So effectively you turn the system on to start with. This is where you've got Polaris initially. It then says, and I've just taken a series of shots here, these are not sort of complete. You then whack up the gain, you get more, and I've moved it into center, so you get Polaris, you double click on it, and then it asks you to rotate these little circles so that you get the stars around Polaris within the center of these dots. So you turn it backwards and forwards and things, and then you get to a point whereby the stars actually match up with these circles. You then have to turn the scope by at least 30 degrees in one direction. If you've got a mount with a handset, you just simply move it to the left, and that turns it around in right ascension. You then do it again, and ultimately, once you've done that 3 times, it comes back. It then says, "Oh, this is the circle. Turn it to your home position, which is where you started from, and the stars should all track round on that green line, showing the new center of the position." So in other words, you can see Polaris in the center of the screen, and it should be on the red spot as well. So you then have to move your mount head down to get the ring to the right there on the red dot. And once you've actually got there is fine tuning that gives you a red and a green to actually get even more accurately. So it's worth, I've done that. So I'd done that, but what I had done is I'd also done that the previous night, and I'd left the mount out. So in other words, what I was able to do rather than having to set up completely from scratch, it was there. I put the telescope back on there in the same position it was the previous night, and I was fairly good to go. The way I wanted to record it, because I've always have a thought, I really like to see, if I see things, I like to have evidence that I've seen things as well. So what I wanted to do was to get an image of each one, because I think it's all too easy. People say, "Oh, somebody finds it," and credit to John Stapleton, who was wonderful with his job at finding things and pointing things out. And they used to, "Can you see that fuzzy rod there?" And half tempted to say, "Oh, yeah, can you, can't you?" And "Oh, yes, definitely saw it, yeah." And so what I wanted to do was to make sure I had documentary evidence. And so what I did, this is using Backyard EOS, which is particularly for a Canon camera. Obviously, it's connected to the camera. You've got focus. It helps you to focus as well by increasing the magnification. I was going for a bulb one because it organises all the. It was a 60 second. I was going for 60 seconds, and I was using 3200 ISO, taking RAW and large format JPEGs as well. And the advantage with this was that if you can see down here, it actually gives you the name of the object I was looking at. So the name here, M68, and then across here, hopefully you can see that this gives you the image, gives you the actual object itself, which comes off the name. It then gives you that it's a light frame. It's 60 seconds at 3200, and gives you the exact time of when you took the image. So that's a whole load of data you can use later on. It's very useful. So this is just really to whiz through the marathon to some degree. This is the plug for the BAA Deep Sky section. Colin Potter has written this one. This is the Messier catalogue, and within it there is a search sequence. This is a fairly standard search sequence that is used. It predominantly works in right ascension to from one, which is M77, and then works basically round, because as you're trying to catch the objects, for want of a better word, by observing them before they go into the twilight and before they set. Now, the amount of daylight that we had in May is considerably less than you have in April, and so it became sort of very clear that I was slewing to things. I slewed to the moon to start with. That was right in the centre of the picture, which was good. I was then slewing to the various M77, M74, and such like, and you see M33 and M31, the Andromeda Nebula, and even good old M45, the Pleiades. All of those I couldn't actually see, so it's a bit of a sort of wake up call, and that I was having to, whilst I've chosen 60 seconds to be the main sort of exposure, I was having to expose at 15 seconds, and it was still washed out in blue. So realistically, the first one I was able to see was M42, and that was very sort of faint, and not anything to write home about. So not the competition, but the aim is to try and see as many of the objects as you can. So M110 being the last one, or 110 and M30 being the last one, there is clearly, I was missing 12, so I was down to a maximum of 98 before I'd even kicked off, which was a bit of a shame. So this is not the picture of the Orion Nebula that I took on that evening. This was taken in the November before. Was stacked and darts and everything subtracted, and histogram stretches under the guidance of DSW. Thank you for that. And so that's what it can produce, the telescope. That's what I've actually done on that. So that's the same picture showing that that's the true context that the previous picture was taken in. And what I've done is I've put on there the grid RA and deck grid, and I've also sort of highlighted with the Messier objects on there. So you've got M42 and M43 on there. So that's just an example of what I plan to do very quickly. So this was one I took off. This was M42 and 43. So this was the one. Whilst they were the first ones I saw in the list. I did go back to them, and this was taken a little bit later because I'll explain it in just a moment. I couldn't get it to annotate correctly. So that's basically what Messier was potentially seeing sort of when he was looking through his telescopes, and maybe they do look a little bit like comets. This was M78, so this was the first one which is taken. This is M78 here, but when you're doing PixInsight, you go on annotate the image. It goes and looks away and chunters away, and it came up. It needs 6 stars apparently to on that under the Tycho catalogue to verify it. And it said only matched 5, so I don't know quite what happened there. But this is quite distinct. This asterism to the left hand side, which enabled me to confirm that indeed was M78. So this is going through the M35 again. This has been stretched as well as annotated, and there was a small NGC just below the Messier 35. Which some of these, once you take, if you haven't been particularly good at keeping your records, and you just have a picture of a star cluster. There are quite a lot of star clusters among the Messier objects. And so this one I was able to confirm it. That was the NGC cluster just below it. M37, an open cluster, again gradually getting darker. M36 on there. So you can see the RA lines are increasing numerically, and some of them are quite M38, quite close to M36. So gradually gets darker as well. So you'll be relieved to know I've got there only 90 to go, and it'll be a great relief. I know that you'll find is that he's not on earth going to go through all 90, is he? So no, I'm not. No, I just wanted to pick out just a few highlights, conscious of the fact we've only got 10 or so minutes to go. Okay, this one for Dave. I know it's his number plate M44 DSW. I've lost it now. So M44. Somebody will prompt me, Dodo, afterwards. So that's the beehive cluster. It's come back to me. So a lovely open cluster and with large magnification, looks wonderful through the scope. And the scope, in actual fact, with the focal reducer on, is very much geared up to imaging rather than you can. That's the reason why I bought the one with the focal reducer that you can take off, so you can actually use it with a 2-inch eyepiece as well. This is we moved through into as the evening. I started off 2040 was the when I was getting the first images. As the sky got darker, then you move up through into Leo. This is the Leo triplet, which I think it's obviously there's 2 Messier objects within there. I've also marked the NGC ones. There's a spindle galaxy on there, and various other ones that the PixInsight has picked up on and marked on the slide. I haven't annotated this one. This is M51. This is obviously very much an enlargement or dynamic crop, as I'm getting all into the terminology now. Thank you, Dave. That's Military Dave for my Zoom session on PixInsight. So that's, bearing in mind, that's a 1 minute image. Yes, it's. I took flats and had to chuck all of them away. Unfortunately, I took darks. The intention was to use pixel maths in PixInsight to take my master dark away from each of these, but I must admit it made limited difference, and as it wasn't a competition on imaging, just as to what I was seeing, that I thought I would leave this one unannotated, but not too bad one for Pinwheel Galaxy. This is a globular cluster that there's numerous. Which ones do I choose? That's obviously M13 is one of the is probably the most famous one in the Northern Hemisphere. M3 is quite good. Paradoxically, probably the best one that you can see from La Palma isn't even on the Messier catalogue, so it's obviously not one to be included in the catalogue. But then once you get to sort of 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, you get obviously you have your meal beforehand, but it's very much a case of you're then about lunchtime, and to try and keep the sugar levels up. So it's just in the same way that you can only use red lights out on the observing platform. You have to use red lights, but when it's strawberry jam on toast, it's a lovely boost to keep you going with some coffee to get the sugar levels back up again. So apologies to Arno if our red lights caused him a problem, but it was very necessary at 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so getting back to after sustenance, because you get to a point that you have a really Messier marathons are really busy at the start there, and they're really busy at the end. In the middle, they can be you can sit around and chat, and that's one of the reasons I quite enjoy the sort of them as a social event, that you've got time to be actually doing things in the same way as if you're imaging a lot, and whilst you're taking images, then they sometimes sort of gives you time to rest and relax. So this is Markarian's chain in Virgo. This is, I believe, this is the one that we've chosen as a society to build up images over the next few months to individuals, members to actually add to. So I thought I'd include that one. So as the sort of night rolls on, you go down into Scorpio, down into Sagittarius. This is the Lagoon and Trifid Nebula down in Sagittarius, which is obviously looking down right through into the centre of the Milky Way. Because this is a DSLR, it's not a modified one. I've also had a modified one, Paul's modified one with me. I sort of was using the 6D to get the higher ISO rating with lower noise. So I felt that was a better bet on these, as I didn't particularly need to have the hydrogen alpha on it. But so that shows the M8 and the Lagoon as well. Then that's the main part. You then have the final rush that back on the list again. So these are the final few. That's of M2. This was at 6:38. So very much I had to reduce it back down from a minute down to 15 seconds. I didn't change the ISO rating because I felt I wanted to change the. Bear in mind, time was of the essence, and just trying to slew to the next object, change the type in into the handset the object, change the in the backyard EOS the name, so it actually went into the fixed header as well. So this was 6:38. 6:39. I did actually do two separate ones, but rather than showing two pictures. 72 and 73 are basically right in the same field of view. So that was those two captured as well, and M30 at 6:41. So that's basically looking at the list. That M30 is the 110th object in the list. So that effectively got me up to the 90, or so 97, no, 12 missing, so up to 98 objects that I'd actually managed to see and image during the night. And I just thought, wait a second, I wonder if I can capture any of the other ones. So I typed in M31 into the handset, slewed round, and just right by, just coming out of the trees. That and so therefore that's based, and I've put it into PixInsight, so analyze image and then annotate image. So that's at 6:43. Basically, to all intents and purposes, it was light. It is stretched as well, the image, but that's M31 in the middle, M32 just to the right of there, and M110 just above that as well. So in my calculation, that's basically me up to 100. That's the 100 images observed and sort of recorded during the night. So 110 out of the total of 100 out of 110 imaged and verified by way of individual images. And finally, I just want the last one to show is this is not guided. This is just a tripod 15-second picture from the 6D, and I took it because we didn't observe the final night, the 8th of May, because I'd been up all the night before and hadn't slept particularly well that day. But this, I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning. We were due to the airport later on, and I thought, well, it'd be daft not to actually go out and enjoy it for one last time. And sort of one of the Germans was out. She was out and sort of we were observing with some binoculars, and I had the 68 there on the tripod, and I just thought, oh, one last picture. And so I think I was really pleased with that for 15 seconds unguided. Quite pleased. So thank you for listening, clear skies, and you haven't interrupted me. So either my connection, I've been talking to myself all evening. But there's any questions that people want, if you want to unmute people, Shane.
Well, thanks, Alan. That was excellent and brought back some interesting memories for me too. So I haven't seen any questions pop up. Shane, has anybody raised their hand or?
No, I haven't seen any yet. So, nor in the chat. Oh, hold on, we got something in the chat here. Oh, it's Mill. It's Mill Dave. He's saying great. Hey, Mill. Dave,
Okay.
you should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, yes, I can.
There you go.
Yeah, that's really good, Tom.
Well, thanks, Dave, for my impromptu PICS Insight lesson. That was very useful, and I do know
Right.
my dynamic cropping and my image annotation and stretching and so on is, as long as I can remember it, what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, it's little steps. That's all. There's so much of the blooming thing that it takes a month of Sundays just to get the basics under your belt.
I think my only comment, Alan, is it was so clear down there you could actually see the grid patterns in the sky.
Yeah, I had to blot out the constellation lines. That was a real difficulty. There was only one red one that I was pointing up towards Leo that I couldn't manage to get rid of.
I noticed on one of your frames as well, you appear to have a nice meteor streak as well.
Oh yeah, I think that was on the Beehive cluster, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, well,
it is. Yeah.
Obviously, because you've only got it's one minute. I wasn't going to take any, and you don't look at them in between.